your servant is listening. You have the words of everlasting life. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus again, in reply, spoke to the chief priests and elders of the people in parables, saying, "The dominion of heaven may be likened to a ruler who gave a wedding feast for a child. The ruler dispatched aides to summon the invited guests to the feast, but they refused to come. A second time, the ruler sent other aides, saying, 'Tell those invited, behold, I have prepared my banquet. My calves and fattened cattle are killed, and everything is ready. Come to the feast.' Some ignored the invitation and went away, one to a farm, another to a business. The rest laid hold of the aides, mistreated them, and killed them. The ruler was enraged and sent troops, destroyed those murderers, and burned their city. Then the ruler said to the aides, 'The feast is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy to come. Go out, therefore, into the main roads and invite to the feast whomever you find.' The aides went out into the streets and gathered all they found, bad and good alike, and the hall was filled with guests. The ruler came in to meet the guests and saw someone there not dressed in a wedding garment. The ruler said, 'My friend, how is it that you came in here without a wedding garment?' The person was reduced to silence. Then the ruler said to the attendants, 'Bind hands and feet and throw this one into the darkness outside, where there will be wailing and grinding of teeth. Many are invited, but few are chosen.'" The good news of salvation. Have you ever been invited to a wedding that you really didn't want to attend? I know, it can be complicated. Hopefully not as complicated as the parable we just heard. Weddings and wedding banquets may not be the same as they were 2,000 years ago, but a wedding banquet is still more than just dinner. It is a celebration, a recognition that something important has changed and something new has begun. The whole kingdom comes to a royal wedding, and we come to a wedding banquet as a community. Some people you know, and some you just met, in a celebration of love, a commitment to love, and perhaps dreams for a better kingdom. Certainly, everyone listening to Jesus tell this story, they all knew what a wedding banquet was and why it was important. Perhaps they would all agree with my first impression of this parable as well, that nobody seems to behave very well. I remember my wedding reception, some 31 years ago. Some details are lost, but some things I remember like it was yesterday. It was holy, and it was transformative for me, even if I didn't fully grasp it all at the time. I certainly don't remember what everyone was wearing, except for Polly, of course. What I do remember so clearly were the smiling faces of family and friends that we had invited. People who loved us, people who loved that we loved each other. People who came together to celebrate our commitment to a love for each other that was more important than anything else. I don't particularly remember if anyone we had invited wasn't there. I certainly wasn't angry with anyone who couldn't be there, but they were not a part of that day, and so they are not a part of my memories of that day. Not everyone enjoys weddings as much as I do. Church weddings, hotel weddings, weddings on a hill or in your backyard, country barbecue, filet, or potluck. They all invite me to participate in something holy. If you can't be open to this holy event for whatever reason, and I get that there are sometimes good reasons, but if you can't allow it to touch you, then you're kind of left out. If you can't don the wedding garments, even for a few hours, then it's just another dinner. Look at the other descriptions of the dominion of heaven we read today. Isaiah promises a vision of God's dominion on the holy mountain that is so inclusive, so generous, and so loving. All we need to do is come to the mountain. And Psalm 23 affirms, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I shall live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life." All we need to do is follow the shepherd. But Paul doesn't seem to require rich foods and choice wines at all. He writes, "I have learned the secret of being well fed and of going hungry, of living in abundance and of being in need." The secret to being well fed sounds like a wedding banquet. But what's the secret to going hungry? Maybe that's important too. Paul tells us, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." The secret to living in the dominion of heaven, on earth anyway, is to live through Christ. And that's only possible if we choose to find Christ in every circumstance. The gospel isn't really about a wedding banquet. Jesus is talking about the dominion of God. Jesus is telling a story about one group of people who expect to be invited, but who see no real value in actually going to the banquet. And so they are not at the banquet. And a second group of people, the bad and the good, the right and the wrong, everybody. They didn't deserve this invitation. Perhaps none of them even knew what to expect, but they showed up and chose to participate fully and allow this banquet to transform them. They chose to wear the wedding garments. A few months ago, I received this kind of open invitation from a friend on Facebook to march with a few hundred people on Madison Street from Oak Park to Austin to Garfield Park on the west side of Chicago. It scared me a little. I didn't know what to expect, especially being in a crowd during this pandemic. I certainly hadn't earned this invitation. Everyone on Facebook was invited, the bad and the good. But the call to connect to my neighbors, to hear what they had to say, to see what they wanted to show me, and simply to be present with them was strong. Many other Oak Parkers were invited and answered. Perhaps some of you were there. I was not unique or exceptional, but the experience of being in solidarity with our neighbors in Austin and Garfield Park was transformative. We marched and chanted. We knelt together as one community in front of the large police station on Madison for some 8.5 minutes, not to accuse, but to call together for justice and fairness. We were invited to take note of the notorious streets and intersections where they continue to witness violence and injustice at the hands of the authorities. We were invited to see the lack of city resources invested in these communities and the scarcity of places for professional employment. We have little, they said, and yet we have to go to Oak Park to shop and give our meager resources back to those who already have plenty. We were also encouraged to come back anytime, to enjoy their great restaurants and parks, but they knew our fear. "No one will steal your car, really," they joked. I needed to hear this from them, and I think they needed to show me, to show us. We ended on the grass in Garfield Park with inspiring words, beautiful song, and both prayers of gratitude for the day we just had, as well as prayers of hope for a future, for change. This was an experience of Christ for me. I felt the love. It wasn't just what we did, it was that we did it together. I've been on the west side of Chicago. I've read articles in the paper and heard news reports of the gun violence and senseless killings. We all have. But I have never listened to people describe to me what it feels like to be a person living in these streets, raising children in these streets, while I was standing beside them in these streets. How can I respond to this hunger for someone to blame? Paul's secret of living through Christ transforms my hunger into empathy and a desire to be a part of some real solution, and into gratitude for what truly feeds us. What could be more necessary to our social and political dialogue right now? The veils that veil us from each other seem very heavy and dark. It is hard to see people. It is hard to hear people clearly right now. This isolation feels imposed on us by others, but also chosen on our own out of fear and anxiety. Isaiah tells us that God will destroy these veils that separate us. And I think Paul is telling us that we can do this ourselves if we want to, by choosing to find Christ in every circumstance. We all want to live in the dominion of heaven just as much as the original audience for this gospel story, and we are all invited. It may be an invitation to fight for justice, an opportunity to serve, or simply to pray with each other. It may be someone reaching out to you who sees your needs or appreciates your gifts. Not a transaction, but an invitation from God. Not something you earn or expect, just an invitation to a celebration of love, a commitment to love, and perhaps dreams for a better kingdom.